Fab4 Expression presents the Unapologetically Reborn podcast hosted by Cody Fullin and Alicia Lynch. This podcast is meant to support awareness and reflection, but it is not a substitute for professional mental health care. If you need support, please reach out to a licensed professional or a trusted resource. A downloadable workbook can be found by visiting our website www.unapologeticallyreborn.com.
Welcome to Unapologetically Reborn. My name is Alicia Lynch.
I'm Cody. What's up?
All right, so today we are going to talk about trauma bonds versus real love. Kind of a very common topic, but I don't think a lot of people understand the ins and outs of it and how they're different because they can often look similar. Before we start this, we are trying something different and we're trying a different platform here to see how this works. So this is just kind of an experiment and we'll see how this goes. Hopefully this works well. All right, so question for you. Have you ever stayed in a relationship way past its expiration date, completely miserable? You couldn't get out of it and you didn't know how to leave the door even though you wanted to? You knew inside that it was bad. Your friends told you that it was bad. But it was like you were physically glued to it and you didn't know how to leave. I think this is kind of something that a lot of people, it's not necessarily domestic violence, but it's a red flag. And it's definitely something many people have been through. And I just want you to know that if you feel stuck in a relationship cycle where you feel like you're miserable, you're exhausted and you're broken down, but the thought of walking away feels like completely impossible, you're probably just you're probably experiencing a biological, physiological trap. I know we've discussed in the past, a lot of times we get teachings from Hollywood and pop music, romantic novels, and they've kind of done us a disservice because I think that a lot of times that we're conditioned to believe relationships are supposed to have explosive arguments and screaming matches and agonizing breakups and dramatic reunions. And if they don't have that, then it's almost like it's lacking passion, but that's not entirely true. So let's try to shatter this myth and expose how toxic dynamics disguise themselves as soulmate level passion. Let's look at the hard science of how your brain chemistry can actually be hijacked by chaos. If you're listening to this and you're wondering why your heart hurts so badly, the goal at the end of the episode is hopefully to give you some clarity and untangle the difference between the addictive high level of trauma bond and the safe, peaceful harbor of real love. So let's get into the deep breakdown of how these bonds start. It begins with why you keep clicking refresh and how it's close to a bad Wi-Fi connection. The clinical term for what you are listening to, trauma bond, it's not just a strong emotional attachment. It's a deep psychological bond that forms between a person and an abuser due to a prolonged cyclical, a pattern of abuse and affection. To understand why it feels impossible to break it, we need to understand a couple different specific terms. Idealization and devaluation. This is a classic cycle where a partner treats you like the most perfect person in the world, only to suddenly pivot and treat you like you're completely worthless. This leads to the other concept, which is intermittent reinforcement. And this is where the reward, the apology, the affection, and the love bombing are completely unpredictable. They happen just enough to keep you hoping, exactly like if you were, I think we've used this analogy, if you were playing a slot machine, it kind of like keeps the gambler hooked on the prize. And then this can create severe cognitive dissonance. And this is the mental agony of holding two opposing realities at the same time, knowing that the person is destroying you while simultaneously feeling a deep, desperate urge to be comforted by them. And this can feel very twisted. If you're experiencing this friction, I want you to remember that you're not weak. You're experiencing a neurochemical hostage situation. Let's look at the actual molecular architecture of what this means for your brain. Psychologists have a name for intermittent reinforcement, and the definition can often be, let's look at like a glitchy Wi-Fi for an analogy. So you walk into a coffee shop, you try to connect to the internet. Your Wi-Fi is completely dead. It's 100% flatlined. What do?
Cry.
You don't sit there staring at a blank screen for 4 hours crying.
I might. I'll tell the coffee. I'll tell Starbucks it's that, or give me a discount on coffee.
Well, it could work for some people, but most people would close the laptop, pack the bag, and go somewhere different. Because it's kind of like a clean break. The boundary is clear. It's not going to work. There's a total absence of connection that's just not there. And this forces you to move on. But what if it's glitchy? You open your web page, it loads to 10% of your video, and then it freezes. It drops your Zoom call. Then it spins the dreaded little loading wheel. But then, just as you're about to slam your laptop and you give up on it, it suddenly sparks new life and it starts working perfectly for exactly 2 minutes. It's high speed, crystal clear connection. You get a little hit of relief, and then boom, it cuts again. What do you do now?
Tossing up a storm.
Yeah, probably.
Wanting to throw the laptop across the room.
You don't necessarily leave the coffee shop, but instead, most of us would sit there for 3 agonizing hours, aggressively clicking the refresh button, getting angrier and more stressed by the second, completely obsessed with generating the 2-minute hit of high-speed connection. It's kind of like a trauma bond. If a toxic partner was terribly mean and distant 100% of the time, you'd leave. You're smart. You wouldn't stand for that. But the trap isn't that way. It's not that they're always bad. Sometimes they're intermittently amazing. So look at the deep comparison between how this function works in a trauma bond versus how it works in real love. So in a trauma bond, the relationship operates 3 exhausting cycles. First, you have the high-speed phase. Psychologists would call this love bombing. You first meet somebody, the connection's 5G, they text you 24/7, they tell you how amazing you are, you could be their soulmate, they put you on a pedestal. Almost too good to be true. Then comes the loading screen, or the devaluation. Suddenly the text, the responses take, 12 hours, the moods change, maybe they become critical, cold, or passively aggressive. You have no idea what you did wrong, so you start panicking. Your brain chemistry plunges into a deficit. Finally, just as you hit your breaking point and you threaten to leave, they hit you with the 2-minute reset. This is also known as hovering. They buy you flowers, they cry. They tell you that they've never loved anyone like they love you. Please don't give up on us. And then your brain goes, yes, the Wi-Fi is back. You mistake this massive wave of relief for deep, passionate love. But 9 times out of 10, this isn't love. It's the relief of the withdrawal ending. Let's contrast this with real love. Real love isn't glitchy Wi-Fi. It's a dedicated, hardwired fiber optic cable connection. It doesn't have a flashy, theatrical 5G launch party, but it's consistent. When you click a link, it opens. When you reach out, the person's there. You don't have to sit around aggressively hitting refresh on the affection, waiting for it to happen. If they love you today compared to yesterday, Real love gives you a stable baseline so you can actually close your laptop and go live and, live your life instead of being held hostage by spinning a loading wheel. So glitchy Wi-Fi is how they keep you hooked. What's it feel like to live inside the dynamic every single day in and day out? This brings us to the concept of hypervigilance. So we've discussed hypervigilance and how you're in a state of survival a lot of times, looking for things, constantly, figuring things out. You become an expert at reading microscopic shifts in facial expressions. You analyze punctuation in text messages. You shrink your own needs. You might stop hanging out with your friends, modify your behavior just to keep the floor from shaking because of the relationship. But, we need to do a quick scan of the physical body. This kind of helps. And it's very odd that the body tends to pick this up before the brain, because you would think that it would be the complete opposite, but it isn't. So where are you at right now? Where's your tension? Do you constantly have some nervous fluttering knot in your stomach when you think about your relationship, or when your phone rings, or you get a message on a text message? When your phone lights up, do you panic? We often call these physical feelings butterflies. We tell ourselves, I just have so much chemistry with them that they make my heart race. But serious reality check. Your brain could be tricked by manipulation, but your body can't. And these are why these butterflies can take place, and your nervous system screams at you that you're in danger. That's adrenaline and cortisol flooding your bloodstream because your body genuinely believes it has to survive an unpredictable environment. I know that's a lot to digest, and it's a bit confusing, and maybe not what you want to hear. Maybe it sounds negative to you. Let's look at the neuroscience of why this is so toxic. So when your brain is constantly starved of safety, and your partner finally stops punishing you and gives you a hug, your brain releases a massive, unnatural flood of dopamine and oxytocin. It's like a chemical roller coaster. The lows are devastatingly low, which make the highs feel intensely euphoric. Because of this chemical spike, your brain pairs the concept of love with the concept of danger. You literally become biochemically addicted to the stress cycle. Let's look at the comparison of what real love does to your brain and body. Real love does not flood you with adrenaline. It triggers the release of serotonin and endorphins. It actually lowers your blood pressure, relaxes your nervous system. Real love is a lower heart rate. It's the ability to fall asleep next to someone because your body knows with 100% certainty that it doesn't have to watch its back. Trauma bonding is like living in an escape room, and you're constantly in survival mode. The tragedy of survival mode is that when you're entirely focused on surviving the day, you slowly lose pieces of who you are. You stop growing, you stop dreaming, you stop thriving. You're not a contestant on a stressful game show. You're a human being who deserves peace, and this is why we're here. So now that we understand how glitchy Wi-Fi keeps us clicking refresh, let's talk about the emotional pace of these relationships. I've heard from a lot of listeners that say, but if my relationship is calm, how do I know that there's passion? So a trauma bond is a roller coaster. Think about the mechanics of a roller coaster. It's designed to terrify you. It throws you upside down sometimes.
Well, it spins you.
Yeah, ish.
My Lord.
Makes your heart leap into your throat.
Makes your stomach jump.
Basically, it's pure adrenaline. You white knuckle the safety bar the entire time, and then when the ride stops, you step off, you're shaky legged, and you laugh, wow, that's amazing, let's do it again. But you mistake the thrill of surviving the drop for true happiness. Here's the catch. You can't live on a roller coaster. If you stayed on that ride for 7 days straight, you wouldn't be having fun. You'd be vomiting and sleep deprived. Many of you are trying to build a 5-year relationship on a roller coaster, wondering why you feel physically exhausted every day. When you get into a car and you take a road trip with a healthy partner, your heart shouldn't be pounding in terror. You're not gripping the dashboard for real life. You're smooth. You're playing music that you like. That's how real love is. Chill. Do there arguments? Sure. But trauma bonds and arguments are pretty close to abuse majority of the time.
Not all abuse has to be physical. There's mental.
This is so true. And you don't even realize when you're in it. It's very manipulative. Let's address the heavy psychological invisible thread that keeps you trapped, even though you know you need to leave. So in economics, there's a concept called the sunk cost fallacy. It means that human beings hate losing out on an investment, so they keep throwing money or time into a failing project, hoping that it can eventually break even. I'm sorry?
They can throw money to me. I won't fail, I'll just spend it.
Well, a lot of times trauma bond can feel this way. It's like an emotional debt collector. You think to yourself, I've spent 3 years crying over this person. I've isolated myself from my family. I've forgiven things that I swore I'd never forgive. If I leave right now, all this pain was for nothing. But if I stay and I finally fix them, they finally love me correctly. And then I win and my investment pays off. Sadly, the majority of the time, that debt's never going to be paid. This is kind of an uncomfortable thing for me because of the person that I'm sitting next to, and I really don't want to, it's hard to explain. But I was in a situation like that. And it's hard to walk away from a long relationship, even though that relationship is sick. And I think for me, one of the parts that was really difficult, and for a lot of people, it's like if you put up with a certain amount of abuse and then this person gets involved with someone else and they treat that person nice. And then it's like everything that you went through was for that person to, make their mistakes and learn from them so that they could be with someone else to be nice to them, which feels really, really unfair. But majority of the time, that person doesn't change. They treat the next person just as poorly as they treated you.
Like the saying is, a zebra can't change its stripes.
Usually, yeah.
Or is that a tiger? It's one of them.
It's a zebra.
Okay.
You could be standing at a broken ATM, depositing checks, check after check, hoping that eventually you'll get your money back out, but you don't. The toxic partner can't pay you back the piece they stole from you. They don't have the currency or the emotional maturity to give you a return on your investment. When you try to break a trauma bond, the hardest part isn't missing the person. The hardest part is accepting the loss. It's looking at the ledger and saying, I lost 3 years. And I'm choosing to walk away empty-handed right now so that I don't lose another 30. Walking away doesn't mean that you lost it. It means that you stopped funding your own destruction. You can't fix a leak in your house if you don't know where the water's coming from. Recognizing the bond is you finding the leak. But your trauma bonding knowledge is only half the battle. The hardest part is actually breaking the chains of the chemical cycle, stepping out of the escape room and choosing yourself. Let's be entirely honest with each other. Breaking a trauma bond is one of the hardest psychological mountains that you might ever have to climb. Your logical brain will tell you to leave, but your emotional brain, the part that's addicted to the dopamine spikes of the, glitchy Wi-Fi, it's going to scream at you to stay. It's going to tell you that things will get better next time. It's going to tempt you to become the emotional debt collector we just talked about, trying to get a payout from a broken ATM. So let's pause and look closer at the last term, cognitive dissonance. This is perhaps the most exhausting, crazy-making part of the trauma bond. I want to give you the exact anatomy of what's happening to your mind. So cognitive dissonance is the psychological discomfort that you feel when you hold two contradictory beliefs, values, or ideas at the same time. So the human brain naturally craves consistency. It hates internal conflict. So when conflict happens, your mind will go to extreme lengths to try to resolve it. In a trauma bond, the dissonance looks like belief A, the person's dangerous, they're cruel, they destroy your mental health. Belief B, the person is my soulmate, they love me, and they're the only one who can make me feel safe. These two thoughts cannot peacefully coexist in the same brain, so it causes an active, agonizing psychological friction. It feels like a constant war in your head. To escape this intense pain, your brain has to make a choice to restore order. But here's the tragedy of trauma. Because facing the reality that the person you love is actually abusing you is too terrifying. It's too terrifying for your nervous system to handle. And then your brain resolves the dissonance by minimizing the abuse. This is when you start making excuses. You say things like, they only yelled at me because they had a bad day at work. Or they didn't mean to gaslight me. Or maybe they just have unhealed childhood trauma. Your brain actively rewrites the narrative, and it distorts reality just to quiet the internal friction. You choose the beautiful illusion over the painful truth because, in short, the illusion keeps your nervous system regulated. Breaking a trauma bond means forcing yourself to sit in the intense discomfort of that dissonance until you can finally accept the hard reality. Imagine that you sign up for a luxury monthly subscription box. You pay a massive price for it every single month. It costs you your peace, it costs you your mental sanity, and your emotional stability. In the beginning, a trauma bond feels like ordering a luxury, mystery subscription box. Month 1 arrives, it's gold-plated. There's jewelry and gourmet chocolates.
Hell yeah.
You're hooked.
Hell yeah.
Month 3, the box contains a single used socks and a broken crayon.
I want my money back.
There's an eviction notice.
Damn you.
You keep paying the subscription fee because you're chasing the high of the month, hoping that the gold jewelry comes back. Real love isn't a mystery box. It's a reliable grocery delivery. It might not surprise you with gold, but it gets you exactly what you ordered on time with no missing pieces.
If it's crayons, we're throwing it.
In a normal scenario, you'd cancel the subscription immediately because it's trash. But because of the intermittent reinforcement, your toxic partner does something insidious. Right when you're about to cancel, they put a gold ticket in the box. Just once. They give you a weekend where they don't yell. They buy you a nice dinner. They act like the person that you fell in love with. And suddenly your brain experiences a massive spike of dopamine. Your cognitive dissonance kicks in to protect the relationship. You look at the single dirty sock and that broken crayon from the month before and you say, well, look at this golden ticket. Maybe if I just hold on to this sock, the other matching one will come next. Maybe if I melt the crayon down, I can draw something beautiful with it. You start treating, absolute crumbs like they're a feast. You stay subscribed to a box that delivers nothing but garbage entirely because you're living in anticipation of the next random golden ticket. Breaking a trauma bond means looking at the box, recognizing that a single sock and a broken crayon are not worth the price you're paying, and finally hitting the cancel button. How do we break this cycle? how do we reset the nervous system so that we can finally start craving peace instead of chaos? We do it with a strategy. Willpower alone is not going to save you here. You need a concrete step-by-step action plan to protect your mental health, manage the physical withdrawal, and ground yourself in reality when the emotional storm is hit. So let's look at 3 core pillars of breaking a trauma bond. We're going to map out exactly what to do, what to expect when the boredom trap kicks in, and how to build an unbreakable reality check circle around yourself so that you don't walk back into a burning building. Day 1, the digital cleanse. You don't just block a phone number. You're going to execute a complete digital extraction. For an example, you change their name in your phone and you don't answer, or not safe before you block them. If you share mutual friends, you go into your social settings and actively select mute story and mute post for those friends so that you don't accidentally see a photo of your ex at a party. You block their Venmo public feed so you aren't triggered by seeing who they paid for dinner somewhere. And then your mind starts to wander. Day 1 is about aggressively stripping away any visual cues that could trigger a dopamine spike in your brain. Okay? Pillar 2, week 3, the boredom trap. Around week 3, the high-stress cortisol finally leaves your system and your brain plunges into what trauma therapists call the boredom trap. Peace feels like a vacuum, and your brain will try to mistake that calm for loneliness or a mistake. To survive week 3, we must intentionally fill the vacuum with high sensory safe activities. So instead of sitting on a couch staring at your phone, you go to like a high intensity spin class or take an aggressive boxing class. Do something for yourself.
Or watch Shark Week.
There you go. That could help. You're looking for a healthy somatic way to give your brain the adrenaline it's craving without going back to a toxic person to get it. So Shark Week just might be a good thing.
Get some popcorn, some Shark Week, and think of positivity because you have to deal with the other person.
Pillar 3, building your reality check circle. The final pillar is your human firewall. Choose exactly 2 or 3 trusted people. Give them explicit permission to hold your reality when your cognitive dissonance tries to blur it. For an example, tell your best friend, if I call you, text panic, sleeping, or if I say I miss them, I want you to read me the exact text message they sent on my birthday. Tell me something negative. When your brain tries to edit out the bad memories, your reality check circle reads you the unedited script of what actually happens, keeping your feet firmly planted on the ground. I want to normalize the physical agony of the extraction phase. When you block their number and commit to no contact, prepare for detox. You might experience physical body shakes. You might get severe nausea, insomnia, depression, or an overwhelming, crushing weight in your chest. Your brain will start screaming at you to text them, to call them, to check their social media, just to get that hit of dopamine and that calm in the panic. But anchor this truth in your mind. The pain that you feel during no contact is not proof that you miss them as a person. It's proof that your nervous system is finally purging the cortisol and the adrenaline. Do not mistake the agony for withdrawal for the presence of love. Your body is just adjusting to the quiet baseline of safety. Safety feels incredibly boring and terrifying to a traumatized nervous system. Let's crash happen. Let the crash happen. Because that means that you're healing. But what do you do when the craving peaks? When the panic sets in? Our trauma response usually forces us into the courtroom. We sit there in our own minds and cross-examine ourselves. Was it really that bad? Did I overreact? Maybe I should just have explained my boundaries differently, and then maybe they would get it. Stop. You can't take a trauma bond into a courtroom. There's no logic there. There's no closure to be found from the person who broke you. Instead, you need to treat yourself like you've just arrived to the emergency room. When a patient's bleeding out in the ER, the doctors don't stand around asking why the bone broke or how the accident happened. They stop the bleeding. When you want to relapse, close the courtroom. Stop analyzing the why. Get into the ER. Your only job in that moment is to stop the bleeding. Put the phone in another room. Splash ice water on your face to shock your vagus nerve. Wrap yourself in a heavy blanket. Survive the next 60 seconds without breaking no contact. This is what your job is. Because your brain cannot handle holding two opposing realities at the same time, it triggers a psychological defense mechanism. This is called splitting. On one hand, you have the reality of the abuser, the person who screams, manipulates, or devalues you. On the other hand, you have the reality of the savior, the person who holds you, cries, and promises to change. Your mind cannot easily integrate the fact that the monster and the survivor are the exact same human being. To survive this friction, your brain subconsciously splits them into two different people. You compartmentalize the abuse as not their true self or blame. You blame it on the stress, their childhood trauma, their alcohol intake. Meanwhile, you anchor your entire soul to the savior persona. Deep healing only begins when you force your brain to integrate those two halves. You have to accept the terrifying, grief-filled truth that the person who held you when you cried is the exact same person who made you cry in the first place. To heal that split, you have to cut off the information feed entirely. Many survivors think that they're practicing no contact because they're actually caught in what therapists called faux contact. Faux contact is when you stop texting them, but you still spend hours looking at their social media, analyzing their Spotify public playlists, checking their Venmo public transactions, or asking mutual friends how they're doing. From a complex trauma perspective, this completely halts your recovery. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a physical interaction and a digital obsession. Every time that you view their profile picture, look at an old photo, or reread an old email, your brain fires the exact same neural pathway that it did during the relationship. You're still feeding the addiction. You're still pouring fuel on the trauma bond. No contact isn't just about refusing to speak to them. It's about actively denying your brain the visual and digital data that keeps the ghost of that relationship alive in your body. Trauma splits our personality into two different parts. You have an apparently normal part, the adult version of you that goes to work, listens to podcasts, or understands psychology. But you have a traumatized part, a younger, wounded, or deeply lonely inner part of you that is absolutely terrified of abandonment. When you try to leave, the adult part makes the plan, but the terrified inner child panics, grabs the steering wheel, and begs the partner to come back. Breaking the bond requires you to stop fighting yourself. You need to turn inward, speak directly to that terrified, abandoned part of you and say, I know you're scared. I know you feel like we'll die without them, but I'm the adult now, and I'm going to keep us safe. You have to become the protective parent your inner child is desperately trying to find in the abuser. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. What happens if you went back? What happens if you broke no contact last night? If you did, let's take the shame off the table right now. Shame is the glue that keeps you stuck in this toxic cycle. Statistically, are you aware? Most people aren't. Statistically, it takes an average of 7 attempts to leave an abusive or highly toxic relationship for good. That's right. You heard me right. You didn't hallucinate. 7 attempts is what the average individual takes to leave an abusive or highly toxic relationship for good. That's right. 7. You heard me correctly. Do not view a relapse as a reset to 0. You didn't lose your progress. You're taking another lap on the track, and this time you have more data. You know their playbooks better. You know your triggers better. Going back isn't a failure. It's part of the messy process of convincing your own brain that the fantasy is truly dead. If you fell down yesterday, the door to leave is still wide open for you today. You can always try again. Now here's your homework for the week. Yes, we're going to give you homework. The mirror test. It's called the mirror test. It's one of the things I wrote about in my book. If your absolute best friend in the entire world, the person that you love the most, came to you today and described their relationship exactly the way that you described yours, what would you tell them to do? Think about that for a minute. If they told you that they were tracking clues like an escape room, or aggressively hitting refresh on a glitchy connection, or crying on the bathroom floor over a toxic taco dynamic, would you tell them to stay and keep fighting?
Never heard of anybody say toxic taco.
Toxic taco. You know, you eat a taco, you know you're going to pay for it later. Your stomach gets upset, but you eat it anyways because it tastes good. That's a toxic taco.
That should be a part of Taco Bell. Toxic taco.
Would you tell your best friend to stay and keep fighting? Or would you wrap your arms around them and say, hey, you deserve so much better than this. Let's get you out of it. Be as kind, as fiercely protective, and as honest with your own heart as you would be with your best friend. If you're listening to this and you realize that your relationship is physically unsafe, financially controlling, or deeply abusive, know that you don't have to navigate this alone. Reach out to a professional who can help you from a safe exit plan. If you're in this situation that you feel like you're unable to get out of and you don't know where to start, this will be posted on the materials. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE. Again, that's 1-800-799-SAFE. Or you can text START. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's free, it's confidential. Text START to 88788. 88788. Breaking a bond like this, it's not a single event. It's a daily choice to choose reality over illusion. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with another person who might need to hear it. Leave a review to help other people, other survivors find this resource. All crisis hotlines and safe links we're going to list in the show notes below. Keep breathing, keep grounding, take care of yourself. Know that you're not alone. Once again, 1-800-799-SAFE. Anything you want to add to this?
Nope.
Hope that you have a wonderful week. Thank you very much for watching Unapologetically Reborn.
Goodbye.
This is where survival ends and choices begin.
Unapologetically Unseen by Alicia Lynch. Chapter 1: The War Within. If you continue to carry bricks from your past, you will end up building the same house. Unknown. If you grew up in a home that looked normal from the outside but felt confusing, unpredictable, or heavy on the inside, much of what follows may feel familiar. The house for a child. The world is not something distant. It is the home they grow up in. The voices they hear. The way they are spoken to, and the way they are not. It is the environment that teaches them what is safe, what is expected, and who they need to be. Long before they have the words to question it, they begin to learn who they are allowed to be, what parts of themselves are acceptable, what must be hidden, quiet, or changed. And over time, those lessons do not just shape behavior, they begin to shape identity. Home teaches a child what to expect from the world. From the outside, the house looked stable. The lawn was cut, the lights came on in the evening, and there were backpacks by the door, ordinary signs of family life moving from one day to the next. To neighbors, teachers, and anyone passing by, it looked like a place where life moved as it should. But houses can look stable long before anyone notices the cracks. A foundation can weaken quietly. Walls can hold tension long before they split. Floors can creak in ways the people living inside them learn to ignore. And children, more than anyone, learn quickly how to live inside structures that do not feel entirely safe. They learn which boards to step on and which ones to avoid. They learn how to move carefully. They learn to read the sounds of the house, the timing of it, the subtle shifts that signal something is changing. This is what it can feel like to grow up in a home shaped by addiction. From the outside, it may still resemble a family. There may be laughter, moments of love, and routines that make everything appear intact. But inside, the emotional foundation is unstable. A child may not have the language to describe this. They may not know the words for addiction, dysfunction, or emotional volatility, but they know what it feels like. They know the difference between a calm evening and the kind of silence that means everyone is bracing for something. They know the uncertainty of the sound of footsteps when a parent walks through the door. They recognize the meaning hidden in a tone of voice and how quickly warmth can turn into distance. And they learn how to adjust. Not because they are dramatic or weak, but because the house is teaching them how to survive inside it. Eventually, what the child learns about the house becomes what the child learns about themselves. What the house teaches. A stable home teaches a child that safety can be expected. An unstable home teaches something different, that safety must be monitored. When addiction shapes the emotional environment, consistency becomes unreliable. A parent may be present one moment and emotionally unreachable the next. Promises may be made sincerely, and then broken. Reactions may feel unpredictable. The child adapts. They become observant. They notice hesitation before a response, changes in tone, and what goes unspoken. These details become information. Over time, the child begins organizing themselves around what they observe. They shrink their needs, avoid adding stress, and become helpful, quiet, responsible, or invisible. From the outside, this often looks like maturity. But what appears to be maturity is often adaptation. The child is not simply growing up. They are learning how to live inside instability. How the child learns. No one teaches a child how to read a room like this. They learn through repetition, through living in an environment where emotional shifts happen without warning. They notice patterns. The difference between ordinary quiet and tension, the way a voice changes after a difficult day, and how conversations shift around certain topics. These patterns become a kind of language, and the child becomes fluent in it. Over time, this awareness becomes automatic. They scan environments quickly, detect emotional changes, and adjust their behavior without thinking. What others might call intuition is often something learned much earlier. It is the result of living in a space where stability cannot be assumed. When the problem becomes you, children are not born believing something is wrong with them. They learn it. In early development, children depend entirely on caregivers for safety, connection, and meaning. When that environment becomes unstable, the child's mind tries to make sense of what they are experiencing. Because children are wired to depend on their caregivers, they often arrive at one conclusion: the problem must be me. This belief feels safer than the alternative. It is less frightening to believe, I am the problem, than to believe, the people who are supposed to protect me cannot. So, the mind adapts. Instead of recognizing instability in the environment, the child begins internalizing blame. The difference between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, there is something wrong with me. Guilt focuses on behavior. Shame targets the identity. Children growing up in unstable environments often absorb messages that shape this internal narrative. A broken promise becomes, I expected too much. A parent's anger becomes, I did something wrong. Emotional distance becomes, I must be difficult to love. Over time, these experiences accumulate, and a belief begins forming beneath the surface. Something about me is not enough. The exhaustion of proving your worth as children carrying shame grow into adulthood. Many begin trying to prove their value. Some become overachievers, working harder than those around them and striving to excel. Others become people pleasers, focusing on meeting everyone else's needs while ignoring their own. Some avoid attention altogether, believing invisibility is safer than risk. Each of these responses is driven by the same belief: I need to earn my place. But no amount of success can silence shame, because shame is not based on reality. It is based on a story the mind learned long ago. The war within. This is the internal conflict many carry. On one side is the person they have become, capable, functioning, surviving. On the other is the voice shaped during childhood, the one that questions their worth, expects rejection, and quietly asks, am I enough? This tension often continues even when life becomes stable, even when relationships are healthy, and even when success is present. The conflict remains. Understanding the origin of shame. Shame did not appear randomly. It was formed during moments when a child was trying to understand what did not make sense. It was not a personality trait. It was an adaptation, a way for the mind to create meaning in an environment that felt confusing and unsafe. Understanding this changes everything. Because it reveals something important. The story shame tells is not the truth. It is a story the mind once needed to survive. And stories can change. If you or anyone you know could benefit from this book, please go to Amazon.com to order it. To celebrate the launch of this book, you can find it on Kindle for 99 cents. Your voice is a lighthouse towards someone else's healing, and reviews help others find resources. If you would be so kind to write a review after you have read the material, it would be greatly appreciated. The book has a built-in workbook to guide you in your journey. Thank you so much, Alicia Lynch.